Toto Wolff expects that Red Bull's diminishing returns will let Mercedes to close the gap by 2024, but he is concerned about how soon his opponents will have shifted focus. Red Bull obviously would have switched to their 2024 challenger early on in the season. But what is the case for Mercedes? Could they have found out early enough that the 2023 season wasn't worth the investment? Let's dive into all the details Mercedes has given out until now regarding their new car and their expectations. After launching the 2023 season with an incredibly competitive machine that went on to become the most dominant car in F1 history, Red Bull team boss Christian Horner recently stated that diminishing returns means his team is approaching the current regulation's performance ceiling. In 2024, Formula One will enter the third year of the ground effect regulations, with the now mature rule set making it increasingly difficult for teams to find time and performance. A fact Toto Wolff hopes his team will be able to capitalize on the next season. The Mercedes team manager was asked if he feels the cars are reaching the boundaries of the regulations after 2 years of stability, apart from floor adjustments in 2023, while speaking to the media. You have the laws of diminishing returns. Your development or performance curve flattens? That is clear, Wolff said. The more mature the regulations are, the more you can extract. Maybe our development curve is steeper because we are behind, but that is industrial theory. Whether you can apply it to the world of sports, I'm not quite sure. It's good engineering. Red Bull's engineering team has just done a good job. They came out of the blocks, for whatever reason, much better than everybody else. And they have a driver who is on top of his game. While Mercedes is presently the hunter, attempting to close the gap to Red Bull in order to compete for titles again, the team had a period of supremacy from 2014 and 2020, allowing it to shift its emphasis early for the next year. This enabled the squad, or any team with a similar performance advantage, to always stay a bit out of reach, as long as the development work was directed in the appropriate direction. Wolff feels the Milton Keynes-based team has been working on their car for several months by now, despite Red Bull's openness about postponing development of the W15 until 2023, partially owing to a lack of wind tunnel time for development of the new car. I'm sure that Red Bull has probably switched off. There is no such thing as switching off completely, but they will have started next year's car way ahead of everybody else, he was quoted as saying. If we were in this situation, looking at our historic strategy, we would probably have been all hands on deck by July on next year's car. That is a month and a half earlier than we have been for 2024. So, when you calculate the gains that you make alone in aero, you are talking a couple of tenths. Wolff said that the earliest Mercedes had switched emphasis for the next year in past seasons was well before the summer break. It was the beginning of July, where we had all groups working on next year's car, he said. You get out of the blocks in a good way, you are leading. You are the benchmark. You understand the car. You're adding performance. Put an aero update on the car and it materializes like you're expecting it to, not like now. And then you are in the lead by half a second. We've been there in 2019, 2020, and then you are in a cycle of positiveness where you're gaining an advantage. And this is one of the headwinds that we're having at the moment. But that headwind will for sure turn next year now that Mercedes' design team is back under control of James Allison. And Mercedes returned technical director James Allison says he also hopes the team will have done enough to give ourselves a shout of being in the championship fight in both championships. During an appearance on the Performance People podcast, Mercedes' technical director James Allison admitted that it was difficult for him to accept Mercedes' decline from a benchmark squad to a struggling organisation. When a team has been, as we were, on a very high plateau for quite a large number of years for quite a long period of time and then takes a dip, it's very disorientating, the Englishman remarked. It's very unpleasant to suddenly feel that what you had previously felt about yourselves as a group, the foundations of that have been loosened by the reality of the stopwatch and being beaten by other teams. It shakes the confidence of an organisation, and it also puts a lot of very short-term pressures on a company that's been used to thinking further ahead. Allison said that he feels that the team is currently in an excellent position to return to the top. I hope that we have put in place enough of a program of work that we have put ourselves in with a shout to be back to winning ways. Does that mean winning a race? Does that mean winning a championship? In my head, it's only ever about championships. That's what F1 is. It's a constructors' and a drivers' championship. So, I hope we will have done enough to give ourselves a shout of being in the championship fight in both championships, Allison concluded. We have a lot of strength in depth at Mercedes, and we've made quite a lot of progress with next year's car. Whether it proves sufficient enough, only time will tell, but that's what I'm hoping for. Fans obviously can't wait to see the new Mercedes rolling out on the track in February. The new and fresh look will give fans and the team enough optimism to start the season with full confidence. But how could it be that it took them 2 years to realise they made a mistake? After all, everyone could see the previous design was clearly not good enough. So when the cars were unveiled in Bahrain, the whole grid was shocked, to say the least. And one of those shocked ones was Christian Horner. He stated that the team was very surprised that Mercedes continued to use a Formula One car idea that had clearly failed in 2022 when it introduced the W15 for 2023. Why would anyone make such a decision right? After the two teams that competed for the 2021 World Championships ended up racing in very different parts of the F1 pecking order at the start of the new ground effect era, there was a lot of hope that Mercedes, along with Ferrari, could close the gap to Red Bull's new position as the championship's dominator. As the end of the 2023 season's first half approached, both teams adopted Red Bull's downwash sidepod concept, but Horner told that his team was surprised to see Mercedes and Ferrari had not taken that approach during the winter. When asked if his team was encouraged, when Mercedes team boss Toto Wolff said that his team will ditch the W13/W14 car idea with the Zeropod sidepods at the first race of 2023, Horner responded, "Well, Toto tends to be a little dramatic anyway. I think what surprised us was that Ferrari had a very good car last year, and the natural evolution of that, we expected it to be a very tight contender this year. We were surprised to see Mercedes stick with concepts that clearly failed the previous year. If you looked around the cars in pre-season, the cars that were closest in concept to us were the Aston Martin and McLaren." Horner also stated that Red Bull only began to believe it had the greatest chance of winning both F1 World Championships for the second season in a row after Max Verstappen won in Melbourne. The Australian event was one where Red Bull was decisively trounced by Ferrari's Charles Leclerc in 2022, and Horner claimed it offered his team with the validation it had been looking for regarding its overall chances for the year ahead. "Certainly coming out of Bahrain, we felt like, we've got a really good package here," he explained. "But we didn't know whether it was circuit-specific, temperature, conditions, asphalt. So it's only when you've had a sample of 2 or 3 and you've gone to a couple of circuits that have been more troublesome, certainly for us the previous year, like Melbourne for example, that suddenly you're thinking, okay, no, this is really together. And so yeah, it takes a sample of a few races to get a clear overview. Nobody was coming out of Bahrain getting too carried away." So the big question is, will we see Mercedes returning to the front next year? And could switching over to the new car early summer this year help them out with it? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below.